Hi, hi everybody. Thank you, Gabi. My name is Maria San Giuliano from Smart Venice, and I am the chair of the Citizen Focus Action Cluster of the Smart Cities Marketplace. I was wondering, Gabi, whether you wanted to introduce the marketplace overall before we start with the action cluster meeting as such. But first of all, welcome to all panelists and initiative leaders who joined, and the participants as well. I hope that more will join in the next few minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Yeah, I guess everybody kind of that attends this action cluster meeting has previously attended the Smart Cities Marketplace Forum, which is our General Assembly. And you've heard a lot about the work that the Smart Cities Marketplace does. In communication terms, we kind of split it around explore, shape, and deal. And the exploring are all the smart city projects that are on our website and the solution booklets that we published and so forth. The shaping is where we assist projects to actually shape in the sense of making them ready for engaging with our matchmakers or the investors network that we have. Now, the Smart Cities Marketplace has been running for quite a while, and it used to be called the EIP SCC. And there's been like minor changes in the program, but the overall approach of taking smart city projects and smart cities interventions and solutions and matching them with investors to scale them up, that has always been like the core thread of what we do in the Smart Cities Marketplace. And what I've already done is I've put in the chat on your right-hand side, for example, the email address community@EU Smart Cities EU. That is, if you're interested in joining one of the action clusters, and we have 6 of them in the Smart Cities Marketplace, you can use that email address and get in touch with our action cluster leader. Another thing that I'll put in a minute is our website, so you could have a look at the news, but also the events that we're attending, and also just explore the website in the sense of, look at the different solutions that are there, the publications, but also look at the investor network and the matchmaking work that is being done within the Smart Cities Marketplace. So I think that's it from my side. And Maria, if you want to go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Gabi. So, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Because I cannot. There I am. Okay, so again, welcome to the event today. This is very briefly our agenda. We have a first interactive roundtable on the topic that we selected for and we chose for today on citizen engagement as the connecting the dots element across several policy areas on sustainability and climate change in cities in Europe. This will be followed by a short round of questions and answers, and followed again by a presentation or an update of the initiatives that are part of the citizen focus action clusters, and then we will wrap up. As Gabi mentioned, the marketplace is organized in clusters. There are vertical clusters dealing with integrated platforms, with mobility and the built environment and positive energy blocks, and horizontal clusters, which are focused on cross-cutting themes. We are one of those. Citizen engagement obviously applies to all different topical areas in smart cities, design, planning, and implementation. And along these years, we have really emphasized on the role of citizens as core actors in urban innovation. We have tried to expand the definition of urban innovation by way of including a social element to it beside the technological one. Of course, being into a smart cities marketplace, we look a lot at how digital technologies for citizen engagement are used and how they can be complemented and orchestrated with offline participation and engagement methods. And of course, our approach is a bit towards mainstreaming citizen engagement across all the steps of the design, planning, implementation, and possibly evaluation cycle within smart city policies. Up to now, where we stand, we have a members list of more than 200 stakeholders. This is a mixed constituency made of cities, but also academic partners, companies, NGOs, SMEs, and consultancies. We led a major communication and advocacy campaign on smart cities inclusivity in 2017-18. We published 3 booklets on citizen engagement. We run different webinar series and collaborated very actively with the integrated planning and regulation action cluster, delivering the chapter on citizen engagement within their smart city guidance package. And also during the last year, we actively collaborated with the Smart Cities Information System in compiling the citizen engagement booklet. You can find this material on our web page as well. We work in different initiatives as subgroups to facilitate our work and to make it possibly more effective. Here you can see the current initiatives that are part of the cluster, and 3 of those are represented here today, and we will hear about this work later on in the session. So after this brief introduction, I would go straight ahead to the panel discussion. You have, as you have previously read in the event presentation, we wanted really to focus on how important it is nowadays that we converge all efforts on addressing climate-related challenges, including at the smart cities level. I think the forum was really conveying during the last few days pretty much this message, converging towards the 100 climate neutral cities by 2030, along with facilitating economic recovery in a post-pandemic pandemic and post-pandemic time. And for doing so, really connecting the different policy areas, not ending up working in silos, and leveraging on climate change policy together with digital transition in particular. So what we start from is acknowledging that all the different policy pillars, the climate neutral city missions, the Green Deal, the smart city and lighthouses, the Living in EU policies, and also more recently, the new initiative from the Commission on the new European Bauhaus, all of those are really have a strong emphasis on citizens, on citizen engagement and citizen participation. And this is happening both in terms of statement, but also in terms of resources that are allocated to make this possible. So the key message that we want to discuss with our panelists today is how can cities be really the natural playground of all these policies implementation, and how citizen engagement can function as a connecting dots element across all these areas. We will hear now one by one, by short individual introductions from Serge Novaretti, Program and Policy Officers at DG CNECT, Marian Cramers, Director of Development at the Democratic Society, Ivan Neirotti, Project Officer, European Youth Forum. And in principle, I can't see here if he joined us in the meantime, but we were also supposed to have Alexander Wiese, Managing Director at Bankers Without Boundaries. So without further ado, I would start with the first round of individual presentations. Serge, please, would you introduce yourself and what you do at DG CNECT?
Yeah, thank you, Maria. And thank you, Gabby. Welcome to everyone to this panel discussion. I don't have slides, so I think it's better to just explain what we are doing at the moment and what the member states are doing as well, and the cities and regions. On user centricity, I think we have made a lot of progress, as you said. And if you refer to the different declarations from the member states, remembering the one from Tallinn, then we had Berlin, and now we have the Lisbon Declaration, when all the 27 member states agreed on engaging more with citizens on the digital rights, also regarding the use of technology, particular AI, and this kind of thing. So there is a strong emphasis from member states on the willingness to really focus all their policy engaging with citizens. On this side, we can also see, because we are at the moment assessing the recovery and resilience facility plan. So we can see that many member states have planned actions, so budget, in improving the way they interact with citizens and the way how they engage with citizens. So learning from the past and learning also from what the Commission has done in, for example, the previous e-government action plan, 2015-2020, where it was really emphasized on, for example, just as an example, around the once only principle. I think it's, of course, to allow with the consent of citizens to reuse information that the citizen has already provided to public administration by any other public administration where needed, and not only in a city or in a region, but also across member states. So the once only principle now is part of many national policy and also at local level. So on both sides, from member states, from the Commission, I think now it's more or less everywhere. Today, we are working in DG CNECT, but also with all other DGs in the Commission. So it's not only CNECT, but we are supporting a movement which is called, and Maya, you name it already, the Living in EU movement, where we are working with the cities, because this movement is not an initiative from the Commission. It's an initiative coming from the cities and the regions, and it's supported by the Commission and the Committee of the Region. Where we want to scale up, as you said, also through previously the EIP on Smart City and Community, and today with the Smart City Marketplace, to scale up solutions that are already mature. So through the Living in EU, we have today around 100 mayors that have signed this declaration. And in this declaration, of course, we have some principles, and one of them, and the first of these principles, is about engaging with citizens. So really being focused on citizens. At the same time, we are developing with the Living in EU, of course, the technical foundation, so standards, etc. But we are also working with the cities on something that is very important to engage with citizens, and we have already many cities that have done that, is what we call a local digital twin. So it's a digital replica of a city, or it could be a rural area or a community, And this is very important, but very helpful in engaging with decision, because it will help taking decision on one. It could be on a more answering just to react to something that happened in a city, because you can always simulate what is happening in the city, but you can also take decision for the future, because you can do simulation for traffic, for waste management, for energy, for whatever happened in a city, and then you can see what will be the impact. And this you can show to citizens. So you can engage a dialogue with a citizen using this digital twin, because it's very easy. It's a visualization of the city, of all the processes that you have, with data that are static, but also real-time data, sorry. So it's a tool which is really promising for the future, and really, I would say, user-friendly for citizens to be engaged with the city on current decision, but also decision for the future. And in that sense, it's help also to achieve all the SDGs at local level, because you can mitigate also climate when you take the decision in towards the Green Deal. So this is one of the what we call iconic project of the Living in You movement, and of course, for being able to set up a twin, we have already cities like Amsterdam, Helsinki, Rennes, Vienna. I don't know in Venice, by the way, where I was last weekend. If you have a twin, Maria, but this kind of tool, of course, you need data, and so besides that, we have many actions to be able to share data on local data platform, which was also at the heart of the IP SCC before. And the twin, in fact, are driving everything that we need as a foundation for that. But on the citizen engagement, we have very good example. If you have a look to city of Rennes, for example, in France, they are using that at least for 10 or 15 years, when they use this digital replica to engage with the citizens. Something that I want just to add, and then I will stop, I think. Of course, we have had already the accessibility directive and these kind of things. And yeah, last but not least, as usual, you may know that we, at national level, we have this DESI index, so Digital and Economic Social Index, that measures the readiness of the member state regarding their digital transformation. And at the moment, we are developing another set of indicators that we are calling LORDI, for local and regional digital indicators. And among those indicators, there are indicators focusing on citizen engagement and also on the digital twin and data platform and so on. And at the moment, there is, I will put a link in the chat, there is a survey. So if you are a city, you can answer to this survey. It takes quite a time, but it's very important, because in that way, the more city we have answering the survey and providing data for those indicators, the more cities will be able to learn from each other and to compare with the other one where they stand in their digital transformation, and especially on citizen and user engagement. I think I will stop here, and then I may answer to some questions, but it's already a lot of information, I believe.
Indeed. Thanks a lot, Serge. Yeah, let's continue the round of introductions, giving the floor to Marian Cramers from Democratic Society.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you very much, Serge, for that interesting first chapter. I come from the citizen engagement side, and very much from the NGO that very often facilitates citizen engagement, both on climate and not. And so looking to lift the veil here on some of the opportunities and pitfalls we see, plus also how that relates to digital. Now, instead of doing a slide deck, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy one link in the chat, which is maybe interesting for people afterwards, which is our publication on community resilience and community roots. And how we've developed a canopy model around that to effectively assess in any city in Europe or elsewhere what the status is of civil society and of all the other elements we feel are important when engaging citizens. Because in our view, especially on a transition theme like climate, it shouldn't be a one-off event, citizen engagement, but very much a build-up that can also be carried by a local government and civil society and local private sector and citizens themselves, of course. And we've run that exercise in a number of cities we worked with, including Orléans in Paris, in France, sorry, and Leuven in Belgium, where those results can be compared, and it's quite telling about what that looks like. I would also say that if you're looking for an external site to look at of what could be a great model, the Leuven 2030 model of how the city collaborates with its knowledge industry, with its citizens, with its private sector companies, and with its other institutions like the university is a brilliant one to look at, and to look at how they've then made their climate ambitions very tangible, but also organized them through this new organization so that they really genuinely sit with every part of the city. So I think that's an interesting one to look at. And then to delve into a few of the observations we see, also from our NGO standpoint, is that, of course, we are an NGO, a non-profit organization based in Belgium. We work with projects that have European funding, but we also work directly with cities, in which case we're almost hired like some kind of a consultant. But I think the first tension that sits within, or the first pitfall that sits within that model is, of course, that when the city is our client, that then defines the relationship, and that defines also our starting point very often. And I think we are becoming more and more aware of this in climate and elsewhere, that regardless of who funds us or who sets up the projects, our main aspiration should be the voice of the citizen and making sure that it's facilitated in an ongoing way. And that is the focus of the project, regardless of what the actual theme of the project is. And particularly in climate, this gives you attention, because very often citizens may not agree with some of the climate actions that are being proposed or being taken. And very often the city may, or city actors may sometimes hire us with a view towards behavior change. So there's a tension there. I think it's a healthy and productive tension, but I think for the many NGOs engaging in this field, whether they are climate NGOs or not, or democracy NGOs or not, is very important to understand what our role precisely in the wider project is, and how to hold that tension and ensure there's a place and a time to discuss it. So that's the first one. The second point, which we consider really as an opportunity and more of a focus point lately, is the skills point. It's not just, as I say, about facilitating a one-off engagement. It's about facilitating an ongoing engagement. But an ongoing engagement also implies that both within City Hall, within elected officials and civil servants, and among citizens and civil society, there is that skill to engage. So there's that skill to run deliberation, to run participation exercises. There's a skill to come to a consensus, even if there's widely differing opinions in the room, but to come to a consensus about next steps on specific points. And there's also a skill to be able to build collective action. And by collective action, I don't mean the typical type of trade union collective action, but a collective action where across a length of time, people can engage in a coordinated way towards the same end results. Again, climate is one, but God knows COVID is another example of where that is needed and where we need to see that. And I think that skill may have been neglected a bit in the past, and it's one that we're really looking to pick up together with a number of our partners to make sure that training and facilitating the development of those skills and that appetite also within civil society, within citizens, but also within City Hall is something we really have attention for. Then there's the issue sometimes we come across of participation fatigue, of citizens being asked to engage in exercises for participation. And keep in mind, a citizens' assembly, which is very much on vogue, can take up to 6 to 8 weekends of people's time. And even if we advocate for that time to be paid for, because ultimately in that case, citizens work as experts, and even if we provide for things like childcare, it still is a lot of time and investment and emotional energy you're asking of citizens. And far too often, the result of a participation exercise like that isn't transparent enough, and it isn't clear enough what's happening with that, how that goes through the funnel. So I would say transparency is absolutely key at avoiding participation fatigue and participation cynicism as well. And even if the result of a participation exercise isn't binding, which is very often the case and in itself is not a problem, it needs to be communicated clearly, and there needs to be a clear path to follow up as to what happens with that participation event, regardless of the topic, regardless of the level of government or the scale of community we're talking about. It's one that's really key for us. And then also when we're talking about cities, I must confess I sit in the countryside here, so I'm a little bit biased. But far too often we look at cities as in strictly the urban environment and strictly who lives within it, and then very often also strictly who are citizens within that, meaning voting members of the public of an adult age. And I think if we look at cities and how they actually work, we need to have a much broader definition of who to engage. So first of all, engage young people, give young people a role. I think it's dismal that they're being declared a lost generation and pushed into passivity over COVID. Engage young people that don't necessarily have citizen status or aren't necessarily registered in the city for whatever region, but they still use the city. Engage the commuters that use the city. Engage the tradesmen or women that use the city, and engage the rural community that sits around it, because it's an integral part, it's an ecosystem, and we will only design good solutions if we engage that entire ecosystem. And then lastly, on the point of digital, I'm going to post a second link in the chat now, which is a project we run called Citizen Voices for Digital Rights. And it's a beautiful example of how, sure, digital is a platform, and we're all using it in these past 18 months, that's clear. But digital is also an entire arena of citizen rights and citizen focus and citizen concerns in which a city can play a very good role. And so this particular project was initiated by us together with the city of Amsterdam, and then took place in Amsterdam and 4 other cities that really engaged their activists on digital, but also very ordinary citizens in a very accessible and productive way to come to an understanding of what digital rights concerns citizens really had. So rather than give you an expose about how we use digital in ordinary participation exercises and how we've shifted online, there's plenty of publications I can send for that, but I think everyone has a lot of experience in this. But I would like to advocate for the fact that it's also a wonderful moment in time for cities to engage their citizens on how they use digital and how best to marry up inclusivity with something that looks inevitable. So how to best marry up the fact that they stand close to their citizens, they understand usually better than anyone what accessibility looks like and what the needs are, and how to engage certain people, and how to use spaces like libraries and schools for digital skills training, versus putting services online before they're ready. So that in that transition of going online, of putting an entire society online, cities are actually a beautiful space to bridge those gaps and to really make sure this is an inclusive story. And that's what I wanted to convey with the Citizen Voice for Digital Rights project, which is hopefully set to continue. And I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marian. And I also think that the last part of your interesting introduction was linking very well with what Ivan will tell us from the European Youth Forum and the importance of listening to the so-called lost generation voices, right? Floor is yours, Ivan.
Hello, Maria. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And I'm very, very happy to see that our last speaker, Marian, mentioned youth at the end of her introduction, because we talk about citizen engagement here, and I'm here to speak about a big chunk of citizens that are often voiceless in Europe, especially nowadays. So briefly, let me introduce what we are doing at the European Youth Forum. So I'm the project officer for the European Youth Capital. And let me just first give you a brief introduction of what the European Youth Forum is, because maybe you're not all so familiar with it, as it's not one of the usual suspects of your network. But I'm happy that today, we start collaborate, and I see that there is potential to to continue this exchange and include young people in your activities. So I'm very happy for that to be here today as well. The European Youth Forum is the largest network of youth organizations in the world. We represent more than 110 member organizations. And let me also mention that Marian was talking about rural areas. Among our members, we also have the Rural Youth Europe. So just to really give you the idea that we really represent every sector, every group of youth that now in Europe wants to have a voice. So we reach out to more than 40 million young people around Europe, and we focus on issues like youth rights, sustainability, democracy, digitalization, youth participation, engagement, and that is why I see that there are a lot of common points that we can bring forward within the Smart Cities marketplace. And then we have our flagship projects, which are the Youth Capital, which I will introduce a bit more into details in a minute. And also, let me mention the Youth Progress Index, which is an initiative that was launched by the Youth Forum that plans to evaluate how young people feel all over the world and Europe in particular, and to really give a sense on how as well, young people's mood compared to different issues is changing in the course of the years. And just today we are launching the last version of our Youth Progress Index. It's a pity that I can't invite you to this event as it's taking place at the same time as we speak, but I will be happy as well to share information and links about this initiative as well. So let me just go back to the Youth Capital, which is this other project that was launched in 2007 by the European Youth Forum, and that since 2009 gives the title of European Youth Capital to a different city in Europe. There is a selection process, there is a jury that evaluates applications, and then once per year a city is awarded this title based on the program that the city presents, but also on the long-term vision that the city has, because it's very important to really mark the fact that the Youth Capital project is a project that lasts 1 year in each and given city, but for us, the aim, and also for the cities that take part of the project, is really to create a youth-friendly environment that really can create synergies and long-term cooperation between young people and the political level, and not only. So let me just also tell you that I also find youth at the Youth Capital, especially relevant to the discussions we're having with the Smart City Marketplace, because what the European Youth title as well gives to the city, to the local ecosystem, is the possibility really to have an interaction between young people, and not only the political level, but also all the other actors that make the society. Would it be the private sector? Would it be the civil society? Would it be the international as well, and organizations that are working with a specific city? The title really puts young people at the center of the city stage, and really gives them the possibility to contribute and really bring forward initiatives that can solve the issues that nowadays we face, not only as young people, but also as a society overall. So talking about climate change, sustainability, of course, young people are among the most vocal players in our society, calling out for radical change, for radical improvement of policies when coming to climate change. We have seen this in the last years before the pandemic struck, with the Friday for Future movement, that the people were really at the forefront in really calling out for more engagement by the political level, but also by the civil society, in really tackling these issues, especially starting from the local level, because the local level is where young people start to gather, and really they start really to understand where they are in the world and what they need and what they want to change in order to have a better future. So I really want to focus on the fact that young people are needed to really work towards climate neutrality and towards a more sustainable way of living in our society. Before, Maria, you mentioned the target of having 100 climate neutral cities by 2050. The target, the commitment that was launched, if I'm not wrong. And let me just add to this that it will be great to have a similar target of having 100 youth-friendly cities by 2050 or even before, because I believe that really one can support the other. And having a more youth-friendly city, meaning giving the space and the voice to young people, can really boost really big change in terms of how these issues are tackled, and how as well initiatives and innovative ideas are brought forward and are really embarked by the political level. This is what we see with the Youth Capital project, that once people have the voice, politicians listen to them, not only in a tokenist manner, just to give them the impression that they are listening, and to have in a way just some electoral results, but really to really contribute to solve issues and really to move forward in these important initiatives. I can also make the example, which is quite related, as we have as well worked on it. We have done some studies on SDGs. On SDGs, it has been proven that many of the objectives of the SDGs that are faced not only at the local level can be really faced and solved thanks to the involvement of young people, because it shows that really through their empowerment, participation, they can really contribute to the discourse and to generate some important change. In terms of inclusion, maybe we will discuss later in the panel. But inclusivity, it's a very important aspect, because we talk about the inclusion of young people, but we also have to remind that young people are not only they're not made of one face, if I may say. There are different categories. There are different types of young people that we have to take into consideration and to listen, because the risk that really in a way we risk to fail in is just to involve the user aspects, the user categories of young people, but so meaning the most educated, the most already by background, those that are mostly visible. But we really have to take into consideration that there are other categories that can also be, they have to be listened and can be beneficial to the discourse. And this is one of the key aspects as well of the Youth Capital project. It's one of the targets that each and every city has to put in really including the whole sphere of young people. And I believe that this can also be beneficial when coming to the discourse of citizen engagement related to climate change and sustainability. I would stop here for the moment, and I'm happy to have more discussions provide you with some examples as well in the debate later on. Thank you, Maria.
Thanks a lot, Ivan. That links very beautifully with what Marian was also saying, but it was the last comment that you put forward was actually a question that I also wanted to make you, and that you anticipated in a way. It's very close to my experience with inclusivity in terms of gender, because young people, in a similar way as women, at times are part of those targets which are not as easy to engage. But at the same time, you cannot say that either women or youth are a minority, right? And at the same time, they are not a homogeneous group. So it's really about how you adopt intersectional approaches and look at generational issues, gender issues, together with other potential forms of exclusion that can be generated from the income and socioeconomic status perspective, but also in terms of migrant background, disability, and other dimensions. So that's very relevant. From what Serge was saying, I really, and also from Marian's speech, I would really point at the need for This is something that we really stressed a lot in our work as a cluster, shifting from commitment and from interpreting citizen engagement as a one-off activity to continuous and very concrete type of action and participation that obviously links up to the issue of the capacities and the skills from the city officials connected to the political turnover at the same time in city administration, right? But considering that we don't have Alexander Wiese with us, who was supposed to represent the funding, the funders' voice in a way, or the bankers' voice. I wanted to maybe to ask you all, how do you see this particular aspect in your experience related to funding citizen participation and citizen engagement? This aspect would actually be particularly relevant for the marketplace as such. Maybe also Gabi as could have something interesting to share to this respect. How to really integrate this dimension, the citizen engagement in matchmaking, investing processes. Yeah, do you have experiences, Marian? Please.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that because Alexander Wiese is from Bankers Without Boundaries, and they're actually a partner organization of ours in Climate Kick. So we know their work quite well, and we've collaborated on exactly this thinking. So traditionally, our work is funded by one of three ways. It's either mostly European funding in the form of H2020 or LIFE, or philanthropic foundational funding, which has proven very good in our early years, but is now kind of no longer really able to keep up to the level of implementation we're going for, or direct funding from cities through either specific grants and projects or through framework contracts. And that all still works, and I'm a real advocate of diversifying that funding, but the piece that's missing is that it all still feels a lot like, if you excuse me the expression, it all still feels like a charity or a nice to have in that way. While a lot of the research we're doing internally now within DEMSOC is making sure that we embed enough evaluation and monitoring in our projects towards actually being able to prove at some point that, look, if you include citizen participation in an early stage of any design for any initiative, the outcome is likely to be that your implementation looks a lot more smooth, that your design, the actual product of what you have at the end of the process, is inherently better and more adjusted to the reality of the circumstances and better integrated with other projects as well, less standalone. And we're absolutely convinced this is the case. And this is also very much where BWB follows our logic and says, in large, for example, large retrofit projects, where you're trying to retrofit a large number of houses in a city, some of which may be owner held, some of which may be rented properties, and some of them may be social housing properties. In all of those cases, your solution that you design, including the financing solution that you design and whatever funds and private investor packages you design, are going to be inherently much better and much better accepted and much more successful if you've included the actual people living in those buildings. And so this is what we're trying to really penetrate the markets with, and also have our sometimes our private sector clients and private sector organizations we work with understand it is one long continuity. And if you are, I come from the private sector myself, if you're a private sector company trying to design a product, you do focus groups as well, and you assign agencies, and you spend quite a bit of money doing that as well. So there is absolutely no reason why a government wouldn't do the same, and wouldn't do the same in a very thorough way that actually enables its citizens to contribute better to that process and actually emancipates them and emancipates grassroots initiatives to kind of meet them halfway. So there are a lot of real world, including financial benefits to doing this. This isn't just a nice to have, which is a luxury item on top of a budget.
Yeah, I'd like to add something.
Maybe I can build on what Marian said.
Go ahead, Serge.
Serge, and then
Yeah.
Gabi.
Yeah, just a bit on what Marian said. Of course, it's a question of motivation in a way, because you mentioned the private sector. So we know the motivation from the private sector. From a public, I think we need a kind of motivation from the high level, so from the mayor. So if you want to motivate the mayor, of course, it's the next election. So here we need to show and to explain what are the benefits of engaging with citizens by design, as you mentioned. So it's not something that we do because it's nice to have, and to show the benefits. And in that sense, I think the best way is to share what has been done already elsewhere, where we can explain the benefits of engaging with citizens at the early stage of designing a new services or, as you say, renovation of housing, etc., etc. So it's more or less what we try to do with the Living in EU movement, once again. And we have now contracted Deloitte and K11 to come up with a proposal for a European interoperability framework for smart cities and communities. So this one has been built on the more known European interoperability framework for cross-border public services. But this one is focusing really on cities and communities and rural areas. At this point in time, it will be published very soon in the coming days or weeks. So it's a proposal that we have worked with Deloitte and K11, engaging with a lot of stakeholders. And of course, in this framework, speaking about interoperability and explaining what does that mean, we have, of course, principles, and one of them in citizen engagement. And this framework, it's not a technical framework. It's a framework that is targeting leaders in cities, regions, and communities, and so on. So it should be, in a way, read by the mayors or people around the mayors. And this document may become a commission document in the coming months. So, but you can see in this one, and this document has been built with recommendations. So we have different components of interoperability, and compared to the well-known EIF, when we have this technical, semantic, organizational, and legal interoperability, we have added a cultural interoperability component. And in this cultural interoperability, of course, we are focusing on engaging with citizens, with the public, with all the spectrum of what you can imagine a citizen can be in a city, being from inhabitants, tourists, people making business, and whatever, immigrants, whatever. So this document, I think, will be in the coming weeks and months one of the key elements to explain to leaders why it's so important to focus on interoperability, to put money, to engage, to fund, and on top of that, of course, to engage with citizens.
That sounds promising. Thanks, Serge. Gabi, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it basically tied into what Marianne, what you have said. I mean, from my experience, to be honest, to work in the environmental field, is that citizens' engagement is always considered as the kind of adds-on. We start thinking about technical innovations. We start thinking about how do we implement them. We talk about a lot about the citizens, but when it comes to actually getting funding to engage and to make it clear that it actually costs money, you know, it's not good enough having one person standing at the marketplace and explaining. It's a huge effort. That's where we run into problems, or at least from my experience for working for local authorities in the UK and in the US, that's where we always had problems when we asked for funding to engage with residents. And that's, that's why I find this discussion is really interesting. But where at the end of the day, where do we get the money from? You know, that's, I think, is one of the core questions.
Indeed, that's
sorry.
Go ahead, Ivan, please.
Yes, I just wanted to provide you with the example from the Youth Capital about funding and money. One of the best outcomes that we have seen in the Youth Capital project is participatory budgeting for young people. So this really has created a sense of, of belonging that has generated many initiatives that before were not even imaginable. So it's really a sense of really, as Serge was saying just before, explain the benefits. Once we explain that this budget is there for some outcomes, then young citizens, they feel empowered, they feel that they have the means to really carry on their initiatives. So just to give you this example of participatory budgeting, which is a very good way to really empower citizens, not only young people, of course.
Thank you. I really that we would need criteria that are embedded into funding mechanisms and that point at citizen engagement as a core component. I think that the debate would be mature enough after several years. Campaigning, advocating, communicating a lot on these issues. In our experience as a cluster, we have also seen that, even the big lighthouses projects, when it comes to citizen engagement, all of them have a work package, typically, right? But most of the times it is interpreted in a one-way direction, looking at triggering behavioral change most of the times in terms of from the side of the citizens, who are usually looked upon as users of the technologies to be deployed, while the bidirectional, type of approach to citizen engagement, where really you leverage on participation and deliberation and let people have their say. It's much less practiced within the at least the lighthouse projects. Luckily enough, in the last few years, a co-creation approach has become more, more prominent and widespread, and this has a bit compensated this trend to convince citizens to use the technologies as such. But I really think there is so much to be done yet in the field, and this needs to be embedded in the funding mechanisms, as you were all saying. Yeah. So I think that we have discussed quite broadly and comprehensively, and a lot of interesting points have been raised here. Would you have any other comments to each other speech? Marian, please.
Yeah, so thank you very much for delving into the practical matters of how it's organized. I think it's an important discussion to have. As for where does the money come from, we see some budgets being allocated, mostly in the cities and towns that can afford to, of course. But I think there's a question to ask: how large the budgets in the marketplace for this kind of activity should be, whether it should be organized within and by the city or by external organizations like ours that can be an independent actor, and how we're going in Europe to structure the architecture for that. Because the other conversation is, of course, it's great to have participation in cities. It would be even better to connect up the citizens between different cities and have a truly European conversation there. And for that, today, we lack the infrastructure. There's only even a handful of organizations like ours that work across countries, and we do our best, but it's still very much an ad hoc affair. And so this is something which the European Green Deal has been helpful in funding, because it had so much attention towards citizen engagement, and so it allows for some structures to be built. But I think we need an intelligent debate within our sphere as to, okay, if we're going to make this a standing structure, how large should it be? How should it operate? How should it operate with those cities? And how should it also be governed and controlled for independence, for political neutrality, for things like this, for also impact and for evaluation monitoring or quality standards. So there's a lot of debates to be had as this sector matures, and I'm grateful that we're having it today as well.
Thank you, Marian.
Maria?
Please.
And I just add, yes, on the European dimension, as we also discussed previously, also you and I, on what youth capital is doing. It's not only a project that lasts 1 year, as I said before. Let me just here present that there is a network of European youth capitals, and it's a pity that today they were not able to come here, because it's important, I think, to also include them in this discussion, because they have the expertise and the experience of involving young people in the political discourse, but also with other actors, as we said before. And I think it's important to know that they already are in a network. And once we want to expand and try to make some links among different member states, different cities, they can be taken into consideration, because they still they keep being engaged in a network. So they have the capabilities and the potential to reach out to more cities as well that haven't been youth capitals, but they are in contact with them because they prepare project proposals on youth at the European level, because they exchange, they interact physically and non-physically, but we hope physically soon again. So it's a very good way to reach out to more and more cities that already have this mentality of involving young people in their own initiatives. So just wanted to present this network as a potential resource.
Sure. Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, that's the case, and it bridges very well also to what I wanted to ask you to react a bit, and also from there we can open the floor to the other participants in the room. I think we need, as Marian was saying, we would really need a European level sort of infrastructure or networking, but also probably more than networking type of setting to advance with in this field. We are not going to have the smart cities information system any longer, converging all the knowledge from the lighthouses, but we still have the marketplace as such. So my question was how the marketplace and the citizen focus action cluster could play a role in this in the future debates and in supporting, because we have we focus a lot on mutual learning, and we try to facilitate mutual learning among cities on this topic and topics. And as you will see from the next round of presentations and the initiatives, there is activities, and there is activity, there is goodwill, which is at the same time struggling with lack of funding and lack of resources. That's always the case. So this makes it even more necessary than it usually is to join forces and to complement each other's efforts in the field.
If I may, Maria, I think as we are speaking about missing infrastructures, so this could be interesting to learn from the ones that are already existing, that have been mentioned by Marian, by Evan, and into the chat by Dr. Jackie Taylor, to see what can we do at EU level. So to maybe prepare a kind of requirements or the basic for such infrastructure, which is missing, as you say, at EU level, to be able to engage not only at city level, but also across cities, even across regions and borders. So I don't know how much this is feasible. Maybe in that case, you can liaise also with the user centricity project that I have put a link into the chat, because they have received already money. It's a H2020 project. So maybe they can help on this one, maybe also other projects that are working on user centricity. Because if you all agree or point out that there is something missing, maybe the first is to identify this gap and to set up a list of requirements, what such infrastructure should look like, and how to deal with the different EU languages. Because I was also responsible 10 years ago of what we call at this point in time e-participation project. We had pilots in different cities in Europe at different levels. And of course, as you may know, the pilots that worked very well were the pilots which chosen topics that citizens felt really concerned. So it was really something local, because it's very close to where they are living, or very close to the school where their kids are, something like that. So it's really something that even raise some emotions on you. And in that case, you can participate. When we try to have pilots and to set up a discussion, a dialogue at EU level, people don't feel really engaged because they don't see the impact of how they will contribute. And there were also the language barrier. So maybe today it's less barrier because we have very good tools to have online translation, for example, so we can deal maybe with that on the language issue. But then we need also to find really a topic that is of concern of the citizens. But maybe it was not possible 10 or 15 years ago with this set of pilots that we had with also the European Parliament and so on. It started in 2000, I think, and ran for many years. But maybe today is feasible because also it's a question of mindset. If you are used to be engaged and to in your city or in your community, district or whatever, then you are more, I think, in the mindset of engaging on topics that are far away from you, but that be also of your concern. So in the more big city or metropole or capitals, or even broader to other regions, other cities, up to EU level. But I can tell you, we try, and it's very, very difficult to engage people on at the EU level and having cross-border dialogue, cross-border discussions with citizens of different member states. But I don't say that it's not feasible, because as Evan mentioned, they have done that, Marian maybe as well. Dr. Jackie Taylor, they say that they can do that with one point that the person put, it's the unheard voices. And this is also one of the concerns of citizen engagement, because who is participating when you call for citizen engagement? Who are the people coming? And sometimes it's only people that also find an interest to participate because they have their own company, or they have their own NGO, or they have their own topic, or something like that. And there are many people that are always unheard. And it's very difficult to go to these people, to find them and to listen to them. So this could be also a challenge in the user, this cluster and focus cluster, to be able to reach these people and to be able to listen to them. And I know that there were some action in few member states. I remember in France, there are some cities, I need to find by which cities, but they manage, or in Spain, I think, they managed to, and they set up a full program to be able to reach the unheard people and to be able to listen to them, and they learn a lot.
Yeah, it's very important.
So some ideas. Yeah.
No, thank you. No, I'm very happy that with both DEMSOC and European Youth Forum, we are in discussions to continue collaboration throughout the action cluster, and this conversation here is really promising. You were pointing, Serge, at EU level participation or consultations activities. I think that DEMSOC has recently run for the climate neutral and smart cities mission, an EU level round of consultations in different cities. That you probably have some lessons learned from that as well, right?
Yeah, plenty. Yeah, we're regularly involved in work that comes from the European Commission that asks us to consult with citizens. The Horizon Europe missions was one, where we work together with a range of partners, because most of these things are done in partnership, not by us alone. Work together with a range of partners to really consult with citizens in, if I'm not mistaken, 14 member states in the local language on themes related to climate and also to cancer. And since then, we've been engaged in a number of those as well. And actually, currently, I think this week, there's one on the new European Bauhaus as well. So it is definitely possible. It is definitely possible also to pull it online, although I will make the little asterisk that very often people think that online engagement is cheaper than offline. It's not the case, because it requires a lot more inclusivity measures, including even providing tech hardware and mobile data packages and things like that to participants and really reaching out. So we're making a lot of efforts there, but with the right kind of investment, with enough staff also on the call to handle breakout rooms or to handle separate sessions and to really distill and deliberate and report on what citizens are saying, it's absolutely possible. But it kind of goes back to that infrastructure point. It's not any one of our intentions to become the single organization in Europe that does these things. It's much more a case of making sure that in each country, and ideally in each major city or in each large language community, we have enough competent, trained facilitators working towards the same standard and the same standard of reporting and evaluating as well, so that we can join up a story and report on it in a credible way. Because needless to say, to this group, it's not quite the same as just having a survey online on a website. It's a much more intense engagement to also be able to distill people's opinions and beyond just their stated opinions, also be able to distill their lived experience. And for example, come to an arrangement of priorities for them, or come to an arrangement of the mental connections they are making, which may not be there in a policy discussion. So there's lots of lessons learned there. There's lots of, frankly, experimentation and piloting still going on, because it's rare where we get enough lead up time as well for European consultation to do the preparation in the staged proper way that we would like. Very often it's quite last minute and it needs to be done now, and very often also at a lower budget than what we initially thought. So it's rife with compromise very often, and that's fine. I come from the private sector. It's no different in the consulting world. But I do think that if we really want this to build up to a European democracy, we need to approach it with a much more of a long-term vision.
Thanks, Marian. Totally agree. I would just open the floor to whoever would like to comment on the issues that were raised during this first panel. See that, yeah, in the chat, indeed, there was Dr. Jackie Taylor commenting on several aspects. Gabi, do our participants have the access to turning their microphone on?
Yes, Maria, you have to click on the participant list and then to allow, for example, if she wants, Dr. Jackie Taylor to become a speaker. Move to speaker.
Okay.
I can do it for you if you want.
Well, if let me try. I did it in case she wishes, or also I would also encourage our initiative leaders who are here in the room to speak if they want to comment. Ada or Sean.
I can maybe very shortly comment, Maria. I'm very glad to join this discussion because before this meeting, I was a bit worried while we were trying to shape our action plan for next 2 years for the initiative. I was asking questions to myself. Are we so much funding oriented? Are we so much collaboration oriented? But then I realized with all the contribution from our close partners and all these speeches that we had right now, I'm more convinced that we need more of these collaborations and cross-disciplinary and cross-stakeholder also approach, because until now it was more for us to understand, as Maria highlighted very well, at the beginning of, for example, Horizon 2020 period, co-creation and citizen engagement was concepts that we had to introduce, but now these are mandatory things also for the projects that we do, both on the research and also on the innovation level. Now we need to also put it more into practice, and we need to be able to scale a bit more on the practical level. We don't need to introduce these concepts anymore, but we need to dive a bit deeper on understanding what type of stakeholders, not only about talking citizens, but particularly talking about youth or particularly talking about disadvantaged groups, migrants. We need to understand more deeper on all these representations of these groups. And as initiative, we were also talking not only as initiative but as a cluster, action cluster. These were also discussions that we were recently having. So I'm very happy that we are all in line with these talks. Thank you again.
Thanks, Ada. Yeah, I agree. I see that Jackie is trying to connect her kit. Whoever else would like to become a speaker, just type it in the chat, and I can quickly do it from the platform. If you have questions or comments. This is probably not.
I don't know about Jackie because she wrote that she was just connecting the audio kit, or I don't know, into the chat. So maybe she didn't manage.
Could
maybe
be.
Somebody else to take.
Otherwise, we move to the next session, if you agree. And just to round this up, I don't think we can really draw particular conclusions if not that we would need a European level type of collaboration and infrastructure that helps really raising the standards in terms of citizen engagement and participation in many different ways, both in terms of enhancing EU-level participatory practices, but also to increase the capacity and the skills from the side of the cities to really work up to standards in a way. And by saying
just one, sorry, Maria, to interrupt. Just one thing. I was attending the steering board of the user centricity project that I put the link into the chat. And last time we had a presentation from Australia where they have set up standards as well. So you may have a look to this one. And also I would be interested in what Marian say about agree on common standard on reporting and so on. Can you hear me? Maybe not very well.
No, we can hear you.
I don't know which standards you were referring to when you mentioned we should adopt or agreed on standard for reporting and these kind of things. So it could be interested to maybe dig a little bit in that topic.
Sure. And then I'll probably give the word to Dr. Jackie Taylor, who's now come in, it seems. So that's very much to be developed and to be determined. Right now, we work to the standards that our funders require of us. But for example, one thing that's been very present in Europe is the Citizens' Assembly, kind of the wave of interest and the wave of Citizens' Assemblies being executed, which is wonderful, although I think they're very much a solution for a particular case and a particular level of maturity, not necessarily for everything. But what we see very often there is that, first of all, there's a developing standard of how they should be executed on. And I think at the moment there's an interesting exercise being conducted by the European Foundation for Climate, or the European Climate Foundation, sorry, called NOCA, which really wants to evaluate all of the assemblies that have been done in Europe on climate specifically and put them side by side. So I think that is on the facilitation and the actual execution of them. There's an interesting comparison to be made and a benchmark to be set, but then also secondly on how to report the findings, the recommendations, how to follow up on recommendations, and particularly also how to organize the follow-up with the citizens that have been involved in citizens' assemblies is a clear attention point for us now. We just came off the back of the Scottish Climate Citizen Assembly, and we're kind of in the after period now. And we're very much trying to work that out. And that is still a very early, immature, nascent debate on how to actually keep those citizens engaged and work with them. So for me, it's mostly a case of, first of all, that facilitation that needs to be, if not standardized, then at least benchmarked. There's a conversation to be had on how to report and follow up on the recommendations. But then thirdly, and this is probably an academic piece of work that I can see happening potentially within some of the Horizon projects, there's work to be done on what is the actual long-term policy impact of a citizen assembly and the long-term impact on citizen trust of a citizen assembly. And then affiliate research pieces as well for things like participatory budgeting indeed. So there is research on that existing already, but it feels like it's coming much slower in the wake of participation happening on a very large scale basis now. And that is kind of, it's a beautiful, but it's also a dangerous period because we are working to an extent in the dark. And small organizations like ours are trying to do the best we can with the resources we have to also have researchers and have designers and do the monitoring as best we can over and above our funders' requirements. But of course, our capacity to do that is very limited. And so there needs much better coordination, A, between organizations like us, B, between the people that fund us, including European institutions, and C, with academia, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marian. Jackie.
Hi there, sorry, I've been interrupting you all in the chat. Serge knows me well. I've been working with reconnects to translate some of the G20 changes that we've made to the global plan into the policy framework for Horizon Europe. But this particular one is dear to my heart because this is the mission for Flying Binary, my company, inclusion, leave no one behind. So I'm an expert advisor to G20, but also the UN on this issue. And one of the ways that I've been able to challenge what's going on is to provide the evidence. When you have the data of the voices of the young people who are being trafficked, for example, you can demonstrate the value chain is creating this problem. So I just use that as an example. And so 40,000 young people's voices at G20 to challenge what was being done gave us an inclusion agenda. Obviously, the growth agenda of 4.4% across the G20 nations was where they were looking. But to do that with an inclusion agenda and include our youth in that for those 40,000 young people were able to challenge the actual specifics of what the G20 was planned. Now, that hasn't translated forward in the way I would have liked. However, at G7 it has, because there are nations around the G20 table that don't believe in the things as democratic societies we all believe in. And so at G7, that conversation has been able to be extended, let's say, and providing the evidence for that. And also, our work in the counterterrorism world gives us a background and a landscape to understand a longitudinal analysis of this. And so the major change I put into DG Connect was we are pushing this whole debate forward on a supply-led approach. We have this, we can connect this, we can do it. That will get us the same results we've always got. You know, the whole Isaac Newton thing. We have to elevate that thinking. So the flip approach to policy that I put forward was it needs to be demand-led. And I've done an 18-month research project that has demonstrated that for the Commission for Europe. And so that's a full report on the system requirements of what that demand-led society looks like, and obviously the technology to follow on with, well, we need to get that work underway. Now, currently, we don't have that funded to be able to create that European-wide approach, get those voices heard, in order to give you all doing the work that you do some framework to work within. Because essentially the idea is to pull that together so you all can use that as a resource. You know, particularly Ivan, I work with Gen Z and Gen Alpha particularly. And so for them, the entrepreneurs that they want to create our new society, I've focused on that elsewhere, like in G20 and G7. And I know that delivering climate change requires that youth talent to be supported in a variety of ways. But what we don't have at a European level, or we have a vacuum, in fact, is how that landscape looks. I have it for G7, I have it for G20, I have it for the UN, I don't have it for the EU. So, I mean, Serge knows lots of this because he's had these conversations. But I think this is probably one of the most important conversations that we could have in Horizon Europe, because we won't actually get a change. And then, you know, mobilization of EU resources is really, to me, just seed funding, because I work in the financial markets and I'm a technology leader there. And I know that there is pent-up demand of funding to back exactly what we're talking about here. But there's no evidence to base that on, and there's no outcome measures that deal with it. So the Lodi piece that Serge mentioned about the local, effectively we called it local DESI in the work that I did for the Research for Europe, but that is a fundamental building block as well. So for me, this is just one of the most important conversations we can have in Horizon Europe. And Serge, you know, I'm in to do whatever's next on this one.
Thank you, Dr. Jackie Taylor. I have to say that I had some difficulties in hearing you well, unfortunately. But the key takeaway that I got was to focus on the demand-driven side of participation. And when we look at that from a broader perspective, we really see that we I mean, our democracies overall are living a contradictory time somehow. There are backlashes in some of the countries, in particular at the EU level. We need to also, as Marian was mentioning earlier, we need to look at trust on democracy from the citizens' side, and that was resonating with what I heard from your.
If we were to pick one word, Maria, trust is the key word. We don't have that. With a supply-led approach, a demand-led approach would enable us to curate that. It has to be earned. At the end of the day, it has to be earned. But the value it contributes is enormous. If I can get the G20 and the UN to sign up to it, the UN signed up a budget of $131 trillion, then it's something that Europe is missing a piece to connect a lot of what you're talking about. The overarching piece isn't there, and therefore that we limit the outcomes we can change without that overarching piece is essentially it. So yeah, synopsis of that was brilliant, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so thanks.
Just have a quick follow-up if we have time to what Jackie said, because she also mentioned data and really having a demand-driven approach. I'm going back to what I was talking about before, this Youth Progress Index that Youth Forum is working on. And really, the goal is really to see where are the the needs of young people, and also it's also a way to measure progress beyond the GDP and the targets that we usually use. We really want to measure it in terms of well-being, of needs of young people, in terms of gathering, of working together. Why young people are in youth organizations. So really this allows us to measure and then as well act and really reply to what are the needs of young people. So it's also an important path to follow, I think, in order also to change the mentality, the mindset of how we deal with young people. I will share in the link, in the notes, some info about the Youth Progress Index. I think it may be interesting to understand as well what we can bring with this exercise. Yeah.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks also to Marian for the multiple links to the resources that you mentioned earlier. It has been an extremely rich conversation and very inspiring. I hope we will continue it in the next months and possibly make it concrete in terms of collaborations. And I would just now give the floor to, of course, thanks a lot to all of you again. Let's round it up with short presentations from the initiatives within the cluster to give you a bit of a flavor of what is happening in our subgroups. So we have shown Eda and myself with brief presentations, what we are doing. Who would like to take the floor first? I know that Eda has slides while Sean doesn't. But maybe, Sean, if you manage to switch your camera on, yeah.
Should I go? I do have some notes if you want to look at them, so you might be able to follow me quicker if I share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, well, I'll start and hope it comes up. Basically, this initiative is very new. We only started in January. It's the citizen control of personal data. And what is underpinning it is tens of millions of euros of technical research. I'm not going to talk about the technology here, but when I'm talking about the initiative, just bear in mind it's completely underpinned with the technology which will do what I'm promising. So we've had a couple of workshops already presented at the BDVA, and our third workshop, and I'll talk about it presently, is on Thursday, July the 8th. But essentially what we're trying to do is we're helping to build the conditions and relationships whereby the citizen will be willing to share personal data with the city and with other actors in the data economy. In other words, all the legal conditions, security, privacy, all the technological backup to do that would be underpinning it. We're involved in the smart cities, but obviously what we're interested in is getting access to the smart citizens. In anything like this, you've got to start somewhere, and looking at the marketplace, picked on the Urban Data Platforms initiative, because there are reasons why they're not being deployed as quickly as they wanted to be. So we took that as the starting point. took a recommendation from a report on the Marketplace site saying that you need methods and tools to help multiple cities adopt, to assist in the setting up of platforms, etc., getting practical use cases, practical roadmaps, capture and pilot joint business cases so multiple cities can adopt, as well as all the technical, organisation, legal issues to be got over. So I took that as initial starting point, those two things. The basic work in the first 12 months, looking at 4 pillars really. One, looking at what the solutions will be available by the end of, looking at a 2-year period from beginning when we started. So next year, after the Christmas after next, we hope to have all the technologies ready to deploy. Looking at which are the most suitable cities to become those early adopters, how to replicate widely, but we're a bit early for that until we actually have something to put on the table to really show. Key is the financial models. There is another cluster within the Marketplace looking at those, and we will engage with that in our next workshop. And then the fourth bit, how do we fit in with everything else going on around us? So a very simple concept is, if we grow the amount of citizens' personal data which they're willing to share, then we grow the personal data lake, which is very high quality data. And the assumption is that that can be added to any other usage of data in a city, or for the data economy, the SMEs, or to add to digital twins, or to add to all the different ecosystems. The feeling is we don't need to have in-depth knowledge of everything that's going on, but we're setting up little subgroups covering, say, the governance, all the different projects involved are pooling their legal knowledge. And another suggestion was the chief data officers be networked together. And looking at standards, a key one would be if you have something, is a citizen going to let you have access to their data, then those interfaces can't be as daft as the ones which cover cookie acceptance. It's got to be something simple, user, citizen friendly. So it's areas like that we're looking at. A key point is that in anything else I've been involved with, if anyone asks me in the pub what you're doing, I say, well, it's going to be 5-6 years before you see anything. With this, I think that the roadmap is so set out, the Commission have acted, the proposals for projects were written years ago. I think everything is ahead of any possible schedule compared with other areas. Indeed, the lady presenting on the governance of digital systems, digitally transformed society, was almost complaining she can't produce reports on time for what's required. So basically, so basically everything's going to be quicker. We're not really talking about a roadmap. We're talking about getting rid of the obstructions which we've identified. Also expecting further support come on stream from the data spaces and the initiatives trying to help SMEs working in the data economy. So plan for that to come in. What is key now, and I really will sound as if I'm rambling more than I have been on this, is how do you put the value on the data? There's the European data strategy where it's basically to produce as much data with fully controllable, easy access to high quality data, etc. But there's also the subplot of the value's got to be equitably diverted. So we've all heard non-stop of the largest companies in the world being data companies and the money flowing off to corporations, etc. So it's the kind of look at how we will redistribute this kind of, if the economic model comes across, if the European data model is achieved, then there's a question, and the answer may answer all your questions you posed earlier on. Where does the money come from? Because essentially, if just 0.0001 of the value of the data flowing across the Atlantic at the moment was rediverted, then that would cover the money for citizen participation. I think that understanding that reorganizing flows of revenue using data will mean that there is revenue for a city out of this, which will be a stimulus, a catalyst to get these systems up and running quicker, and to actually give a spare to the local data economies as well, who can pick up on the use of this data, which we will be releasing. The problem is of measuring it. You get lots of different studies, lots of ways saying what a citizen would like to be paid for their data if they didn't want to give it up just for their own benefits, for altruism, for research, etc. Big UK one was on what would happen with in the world of geospatial data if it was all completely released, and how much gross value added would come out of it. But basically, Open Data Watch really kind of say that every author is still grappling how to do it their way, no consensus on how best to measure it, and that without that, it's more difficult to persuade cities to, say, deploy an urban data platform, etc. So what it is that you can't compare it with oil for its value, because it's reusable. It doesn't disappear. You can use it for thousands of applications, or following that, counting it as IPR, because everything breaks down when you track down the uses of the data. So basically, at our next workshop, we will have the safety project report, which have looked at detail of how you define the value of data, particularly in the context of where it lives, its data quality, its privacy, and the reporting, etc. But one of the notions they came up with was looking at impact-based narratives, and that is echoed in being called data narratives by somebody in Harvard, I think. But essentially, it's you try to tell the story based on the data with real outcomes and context, and try come up with a more simple understanding for a city how valuable it is for them to be able to use it. So it's really to start looking at the story of the data in the city, still underpinned with economic values if we can. And that's what we're going to move on to in the next phase. The last point I just wanted to make is talking about the exemplars. Well, within all these projects, we've got lots of demonstrations of using citizens' data in the kind of stuff they would share with Facebook willingly, etc. In areas like mobility, economic development, sports, leisure, culture, using it in energy and health, as well as trans-border uses in education and health, and also looking at more rural things, travel, tourism, agriculture, as well as looking at how it would be used by SMEs in that sense. So that's basically what we're trying to do. And as you can see, it's like herding cats. But if we get rid of some of these obstacles we've identified, it will mean that in 18 months' time, it'll be easier to deploy all these technologies collectively. We'll have a better idea of where the money comes from. And we will be hitting many, many, many kind of targets, better policies, better services, better functioning marketing, and better sharing of any value created from it. So we've helped create the European model. And just in conclusion, that it's so complicated, a government can't order it to happen. The market doesn't have simple products to sell, and there's so many networks and ecosystems required. It's quite a convoluted mess. So that's what this initiative is trying to do.
Thank you, Sean. It's indeed, as you were mentioning, a very complex matter. As you said, it's like herding cats somehow. But yeah, good luck. And I think that as a new initiative, you are doing a lot of interesting stuff already. Please type in the chat the date of your next workshop if you wish. And you see that there is Jackie again asking for a particular issue that you might address again in the chat. So we have really 15 minutes left to go through quickly the two other initiatives. Eda and I should make it very, very short. Right, Eda? Please go ahead.
But luckily, most of the people here know about the Citizens Initiative, so I will try to focus on mostly the parts how we can even scale up on the conversations that we had right now. So I will go more on what are the key performance indicators that we established for the initiative and how we can make these KPIs more aligned with each other. So maybe the opportunities can come out from here, and don't hesitate to reach us out if you have any further questions about what we have done, because now we don't have time much to go on what we have done. So I want to concentrate more on what we are planning in line with all the discussions we had right now. I will quickly share a couple of slides. Maybe entire screen. I cannot share right now, but I will go over by talk. I think it will be faster this way. Maria, if you agree.
As you wish.
As you know, Citizens Initiative started in 2015, and by 2017, sets created to help cities to engage with society. Actually, Citizens represents advocacy of the citizenry of cities in the process of city making with two practical aims. First one is the promoting co-creation with all the stakeholders of the cities, including residents, workers, residents of non-nationals, refugees, tourists, entrepreneurs, businesses included. And second aim was more on creating innovative and scalable and sustainable tools and platforms that bring these populations into the placemaking process, in a co-creation process. So as a result of these studies that have been done mainly by John, who is not here today, the Citizens Social Engagement Toolkit is established, and tool inspired by the European Manifesto on Citizen Engagement, which aims at facilitating the implementation of the principles, among others, to bridge the needs of cities. So SET is practically the collection of tools and methods that is now in the market that bridge cities to existing learning on citizen engagement. So it's mapping actually of the citizen engagement tools and practices on that level. So the first part of it was mainly on organizing the framework, what is there. The second one is more on understanding, matching the cities and the tools. And the third one is on the creating the tool itself. What we have done so far, last 5-6 years within that process, it was more on understanding the landscape, actually. Within all this project that was accomplished within Horizon 2020 or other framework programs or smart city initiatives across Europe, in order to understand what are the needs of cities on citizen engagement and more going towards the citizen city approach. And then during that process, a lot of networking and development of collaboration and creating the beta toolkit, which we call SET. And also exploring multiple paths, like in order to understand what type of thematics we need to more concentrate on. We had a lot of networking activities within the mobility field, within climate field, or circular economy fields. So as a result, especially with my inclusion in the initiative, we decided, because I'm working mostly on the Horizon 2020 project, more on the practical side of the citizen engagement within different thematic fields related to smart cities, we decide to focus more and activate more the application process of these tools and networking activities that we have carried so far in the initiative. So now we are in the process of organizing and creating new plans and build connection and paths for the scalable models. For this, the main key performance indicators we have is first on the policy agendas, like a digital, green, and inclusive recovery in Europe for at least for next 7 years, taking in consideration separately all the policy agendas we have. We need to concentrate on this policy fields, and we really want to be in line while we are putting into practice our tools. We would like to work together with these fields. And funding programs, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, and Just Transition. I think in order to go more on the practical level, we really need these funding programs, and we need to scrutinize more, not only as an initiative, but as a collaborative process. We are very willing to collaborate with not only with the action cluster members, but also with other synergy building and collaboration activities. For example, European BAOs, Civitas, these are also, or democracy and youth platforms. These are also the platforms we would like to collaborate and understand how we can put all these tools into practice. And also something that we were not doing so far was the stakeholder management. We didn't have a systematic way, as I told you earlier, to go deeper on the citizen level. Which citizens? What are their needs? To understanding. This would be I think the very practical step for us to bring policy and practice also together. And of course, also creating more dissemination and exploitation activities in parallel to all these things. Where in our roadmap, we will have co-creation activities together with the initiatives and also with the citizens, and maybe training activities on the thematic level, but also the stakeholder level. For example, as we talked with youth, or mobility, or with migrants. And also together with them, together with this thematic and stakeholder perspective, we will also go very close to policy perspective to understand how we can really apply these proposals or discussions into projects. So probably in first year, it will be more on the co-creation and market activation process. But in the second year of our action plan, like in 2023, we would like to have at least a couple of practical projects, briefs, and articles that we can have more result-oriented and also impact-oriented outcomes.
Thanks, Eda. That's great. It's really interesting, and I know it was challenging to present everything in such a short time. So I will have to try and do the same. What can you see from my screen? Can you see a presentation? I hope so. Do you?
Yes,
Yes,
we do.
Okay. Very briefly. So this is, oh no, but not from the beginning. Come on. Let's see. Sorry. I have been chairing the initiative on participatory budgeting. Can you see the right slide? For 2-3 years, together with Michelangelo Secchi, and we have focused on really benchmarking on different participatory budgeting practices, but also mostly the online platforms. That was the moment where we also got in touch with Democratic Society, by the way, who was also participating in some of our workshops. And we had several mutual learning events and webinars and benchmarking tools for cities, trying really to promote the use of mostly open source existing participatory budgeting platforms. This initiative is now going to be reshaped and broadened in scope. I'm also currently still working on this, and so it is quite very much in progress. the idea that I've also been discussing with some other organizations, trying to bring them in this rebranding of these initiatives would really be aimed at shifting the focus from one particular methodology, although it can be interpreted in multiple ways, participatory budgeting, to democratic innovations and inclusivity, intersectionality aspects. So the idea is from now on to really work on how understanding how and under what conditions participatory and deliberative processes can be designed and applied, to look at which can be again the use of online, offline mixed methods for these for these purposes, and also how thematic engagement can be leveraged and orchestrated with more, let's say, cross-cutting, open participation and deliberation. And last but not least, the aspects related to intersectional engagement and inclusivity, what we have referred in the previous panel already. So how to make sure that not only the usual suspects are engaged, but really looking at how potential exclusion dynamics can be reproduced in participation and deliberation across gender identity, social class, race, and age, and other dimensions, but still without ending up in, let's say, reproducing tokenist practices. So the way we would like to do it very concretely, and we have already started mapping on which existing already funded Horizon 2020 projects we could set up collaborations with in order to explore these different aspects. On the aspects related to participation and deliberation practices, we would like to organize 3 online workshops with the Demotech project. Democratic Society is one of the partners. With the EU Arenas project led by the University of Eastern Finland, and with the EU Meet project coming all from the governance call. They will all deploy different participatory and deliberative process across cities in Europe, using multiple methodologies, and I think there is a lot to learn from there, and we will have workshops with them. We are already in a dialogue with EUCOM Meet and all the other projects, and the idea is to end up with one position paper at the end of the process, and a capacity building script for cities that could eventually be tested if we will find the way to do it concretely. The other area is about testing and exploring thematic applications of participatory and deliberative processes with focus on particular topics, and for this purpose we plan a couple of online workshops here, one with Green Deal consortia, those which have been recently funded, but also engaging with the vertical clusters in the Smart Cities Marketplace, and with some of the lighthouse projects as well. Also in this case, we would work with online workshops, one position paper as an outcome, or one, let's say, report with recommendations, and possibly one capacity building script for cities. Last block on inclusivity and intersectional dimension. would be addressed in a way cross-cutting all the previously mentioned dialogues, but also via dedicated workshops with the community from the gendered innovations experts, which is also led by the Commission together with Stanford University, and involves really many universities across Europe, and there is a lot to be taken and scaled up in terms of knowledge from that community, but then also possibly collaborating with European Youth Forum and the Age platform for the, let's say, generational issues, part of the inclusivity, and then also other stakeholders. And in this case as well, same structure: workshops, a position paper, and capacity building script. This would be the timeline, and it will continue with an ongoing project proposal design activity along the way. So we would start with participation deliberation already from this autumn, and then continue next year on thematic applications, inclusivity and intersectionality. And that's it from my side. I back to the to see you all again after sharing my screen. So and we and in order to reach out to initiative leads, you can just write to us. And get in touch with us, I would say. If you have any questions and topic. Oh, I see that you couldn't see my slides at the end. You couldn't? No. Okay, that's a pity. Yeah, I think yeah, the slides can be made available somehow. Yeah. Sorry for that.
Yes, we can upload the slides as part of an article on the EU on the Smart Cities Marketplace website. Same for the recording, by the way. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great. For contributing to the expanded initiative on democratic innovation and inclusivity, you can reach out to me directly. Either if you want to type your contacts also in the chat box. Any comments, suggestions, final inputs? Because we have finished our time, so yeah, the contacts are popping up in the chat. So I would just thanks again all of you for being here. Someone from the participants already left, but I really enjoyed a lot the discussion, the interaction with all of you, and I really hope that we'll continue along the way in collaborating.
Yes, thank you, Maria, and thank you from the Smart Cities Marketplace side too.
And my wife put a bowl of cherries in front of me, and I've been waiting to eat them. So bye.
Goodbye. Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Just another.